Hi guys, myself Shubham Sharma, and in today's video we would be discussing about what? Threading. Okay, this is the one of the most important topic asked in the interview questions. Okay, so this video is going to be our first tutorial video. Okay, so based on the response I get on this video, I would be making the further videos. So I am making a target of 10 like on this video. So if we meet the target, then I would bring out the further videos. Fine. Why threading? So basically threading is one of the most the crucial topic in which most of the even the experienced person are not clear about it. Okay. I have nearly studied this topic, that is threading, for almost a week, and after studying throughout the week I had concluded it. Okay, in this video I would be concluding out what I have studied in last week. The first question arises, what is threading? Threading simply means dividing our task into smaller units, and each smaller unit would be handling a separate task. Okay, the question arises, why we need threading? As we nowadays have multi-core processors like quad-core processor, dual-core processor, even octa-core processor. So threading help us to basically optimize the use of the processor or the CPU and bring out the result as fast as possible. Okay, in order to have the detailed analysis of threading, let's move on to our screen. As you may see on the screen here, that the red line is basically the a main thread. This is the main thread. Okay, and T1 and T2 are the subsidiary threads which are used to perform some task. Okay, so when we run a program or a code, the main thread is running out. Okay, if we write the entire code on the main thread, then what will happen? It would be using a simple one core of our CPU, and our task would be done, for example, in 30 seconds. But if we divide our task into three parts, that is on the main thread, T1 thread and T2 thread, so what will happen? The entire task could be completed within 10 seconds. How? For example, the 10-second part would be done in the main thread, rest 10-second part would be done in the T1 thread, and the another 10-second part would be done in the T2 thread. So this is how the threading works, that is dividing our task into various threads and performing out simultaneously. And how it happens? Basically, main thread would be working in one core, T1 thread would be working another core, and T2 thread would be working on the third core. How these codes would be provided out to each and every thread, and what is the maximum amount of thread we may have, those are the part of the multi-threading concept, which comes under the Executor framework, which we would be eventually learning out in our next video. Right now we must understand first the basics of threading, then only we may jump out to the multi-threading concept. How threading works, I have just explained you out that, for example, there are dual core processor. Then if we have the two thread, that is main thread and T1 thread, one part would be done in, that is the main thread part would be done in core 1, and the T1 thread part would be done in core 2. And after the completion of the task, the T1 or the T2, any subsidiary thread would eventually come back to the main thread. This is the must which you should do, that is bring out the subsidiary thread to the main thread after the task has been completed. Because if you will not bring out the thread back to the main thread, then there would be the excessive consumption of the resources, that is the CPU. Because after the task has been done, there is no requirement of the thread T1 to be running in the core 2. So it should free out that our resource, that is CPU. Similarly, the things work out in quad-core processors, okay, or octa-core processors, anyhow. Then the question arises, how can we create a thread? Basically, there are three methods of creating a thread. The first one is via the thread class. Then the second one is via the Runnable interface. And the third one is via the Callable interface. And the Callable interface is only used when your thread would be returning some value to the main thread. Okay, then only you need to use the Callable interface. Otherwise, you would be using mainly either thread class or Runnable interface. And for the preference, I would suggest you so as to use a Runnable interface, because Java doesn't allow multiple inheritance. So if you would be needing any other class other than thread class and you want to extend it in our class, okay, you would not be able to do it via the thread class, okay, because two class can't be inherited. So for that purpose, I would suggest you so as to use the Runnable interface, but you may via either of two. Okay. That is thread class or Runnable interface. Any of you may use out. So let us check in details that how can we create a thread. First comes is what? A thread class. For example, we have created a class named Shubham. Okay, my name. Extend thread, which is a class of thread. Then comes public void run, and there is a print statement there, thread running. Then comes our main function, which would eventually be running out first. Okay, because it is a driver function. Shubham T1 equals to new Shubham. You must be knowing it. What is done here? Basically, we are creating an object of class Shubham, and what we are doing it now, just we are typing t1.start. So t1.start, what does it do? It would eventually call out the run method, okay, which is written above, that is public void run. When we start a thread, that is t1.start, the run method would eventually be called out itself. Okay, our thread would be printing what? Thread is running, and after performing the task it would come back. Then the next come is Runnable interface. If you want to create a thread using Runnable interface, then this is the well set procedure for it. Okay, or you may say the syntax for it. How Runnable interface works? Basically, Runnable interface is implemented in the thread class. Okay, it is not anything different. Basically, it would eventually be using what? The function of thread class only. So how does it work? Class Shubham2, okay, a class name simply. Then come implements Runnable interface, public void run. This is the run function which would be running out when a thread is created. Then comes our main function. Then what we need to do, create an object that is Shubham2 ob equal to new Shubham. Then if you are using Runnable interface, you need to create an object of thread class, that is thread t1 equals to new thread, and pass your class object here. Okay, in the parameters, that is ob. And just eventually you have to do t1.start, which would eventually call out the run method. So this is how the Runnable interface works out. Then what comes? Methods used in a thread. So the method used in a thread are these. These are the most common method which we use in threading. The first one is start, which we eventually use to start a thread. Okay, then is run method, which would be called out when a thread is running. Okay, everything of the thread is done eventually in the run method only. Wait method is used so as to wait until a specific signal is received from the thread. For example, notify or notify all. Basically, these are used in pair. Wait or notify all. Wait and notify. These are used in pairs. Notify function would give a signal to the wait that this task or this thread has been run out. So further task could be eventually done. Join method is used when we want to tell a thread that when thread T1 task is completed, that is it is dead, then only the further thread or the task would be executed out. Okay, this is why the join function is used out. Then comes the current thread function. It tells about the current thread in which you are working out. Is alive tells whether the thread is alive. Why the sleep method? We tell the thread to become inactive for a certain time. Okay. Then comes the get name. It is used so as to get the name of the thread. Get state. It is used to check the status of the thread, whether it is active, inactive or dead. Then comes the get priority. It is used so as to check the priority. Then at the end comes a thread lifecycle. So once the thread is created, how it is created? Via creating an object of a thread class. We eventually create a thread. Then as we use the statement t1.start, the run function is called out, thread gets started. As the thread is running out, a program is executing inside the run function. This is known as the running state. And if we use a statement like t1.sleep inside the run function, then that state is known as on hold state, and once the thread is dead, it is basically known as termination state. So this is all about the threading concept. This is asked most frequently in the interviews. So I have discussed this topic first because it was even asked in the real level interview. So I have chosen it, make a video on it first. If you like my way of expressing the things, then make sure to subscribe the channel. And the target for the next video is just 10 likes. As you complete the likes, that is the 10 like, I will bring out the video. That is a next video on multi-threading concepts. Okay, so I would meet you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye.
मैं ईद का वो चांद जो चमका नहीं एक रात में, हाथ में वो बात जो बात तेरी औकात से, तू फटू है ये जोर पूरा लगा नहीं पाप से।